Hello my friends, welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today we're going to talk about what was once one of the most popular series on my channel, the 5511 Commander, or 5551 Commander. Basically, could you use a commander unmaxed and get the majority of the value? And although that once was true, times are changing. QSH exists, and I don't think 5511 or 5551 actually is viable anymore. Now, we're going to talk about why it was that 5511 was so popular and why that was one of the most popular series on my channel. We're going to talk about why it is that that style of thinking about commanders is honestly long dead. Like, very, at this point, I think, long dead. And I tried to make a video 3 or 4 months ago, I think, with some suggestions for what you could do. But now that, like, QSH is here and we see the power level of Achilles and the design of these commanders, it's very clear that we're no longer in this world where 5.5 or 5.5.5.1 unmaxed commanders are viable. So why is that the case? So the thing that made this style of working on a commander, and for those that don't know, we're talking about the levels on the skills, right? 5.5.1.1 or 5.5.5, max the first 3 skills, 1. Is that back in my day, okay, you'd have commanders that had expertise skills that were borderline irrelevant. So maxing the commander from the standpoint of the expertise skill kind of didn't matter. Perhaps one of the best examples of this back in the day was Saladin. If we get a look at Saladin's expertise skill, yeah, it is definitely nice to get a little more damage factor and reduce their march speed and reduce the healing they receive. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely nice. But, to my second point about these commanders, did you really want to commit 310 extra sculptures to finish them off to get it, was a question that a lot of early game players struggled with. Perhaps a better example, this will convince you more. Now I really gotta dust off the collection. Leonidas. Here's a skill we can all agree is not all that important in the open field. When the commander's troops drop down to 10%, you deal 400% more damage, and you take 50% less damage for 10 seconds. Happens once every time you leave your city, right? This is not all that important for the open field. So people made the justification for a commander like Leonidas that, gosh, like, the expertise doesn't matter. Do I really need to max him? And you'd use him unmaxed and get the majority of the value in the open field. So point 1 is the expertise actually all that relevant? And there were a lot of commanders where that was not the case. Point 2 is, do I really need to spend the last 310 sculptures? That's 75, 75. Actually, it's 320 sculptures, my bad. 320 sculptures, right? And then 80, 80. Is that right? No, I got it right. 310. Whatever. First thing in the morning, Chisgule trying to do math. Don't do it, cheesy. Don't do it. Anyways, do I really need to spend? It takes 700 sculptures to unlock and max a commander. Almost half of that was going toward a last skill like I showed you on Saladin that didn't do anything. So people love to not have to do that. And then lastly, some skills delivered like more than 50% of their value purely from unlocking them. Perfect example of that, going back to Leonidas, is that you would try to get just 1 point onto this skill. In fact, this gives you, okay, so if this commander's troop has less than 50% of units remaining, already people are like, you know, back in the day, you'd refresh, you'd go back to your city. You wouldn't fight with less than 50% of troops remaining. I know that sounds weird to the modern player of Rise of Kingdoms, but back in the day, man, you ran your ass home. It just is what a lot of people did. That's how a lot of people thought about the game. All right, different times, way different times. Getting resources was a lot harder back in the day, all right? It was a different landscape entirely. Getting speed-ups was a different landscape entirely. Okay, so whenever you're hit with a basic attack, you had a 10% chance to gain a shield. You already, for 1 point in this, get 600 shield factor. You don't get as much attack percentage, but, like, people looked at this skill and they're like, yeah, I only need 1 point in this. I don't need this skill. I'm chilling. On the final skill over here, 5511, if you did it with this commander, well, gosh. Like, the last skill, just unlocking it, you get half the value. So if I could spend just the tiny amount of sculptures to max the first two skills, right? We were cooking. These were the days, baby. So those are the three things that were true of commanders back in my day that made it viable, made it compelling, made it meta to not max out commanders potentially, so that you could go focus on other stuff. One of the best commanders to ever have been dropped in that you could use in this state that still kind of qualifies is William, funny enough. Now, these days, if you're going to try to use William in the open field, like, I think you got to have him maxed out, okay? But he was a great example of a 5551 commander, where this last skill, you get more than half the value just from unlocking it, okay? When your active skill hits only one target, you would get 10% defense. And if you hit 2 or more targets, 5 nearby allies or friendly troops get an extra 50 rage per second and 10% defense for 3 seconds. The rage per second is what you wanted. The defense was icing on the cake, and having this skill maxed was not really viewed as critical. Now, it's funny because the expertise is actually pretty decent. It improves his instant proc damage. It improves his attack boost. It's actually pretty nice, but plenty of people would have argued, and myself included, that, hey, if you had to run this thing 5551, you were cooking, all right? You could cook. And the other thing is that you could consider it an end state. You didn't have to plan to come back to work on him further. You could get to this point and consider it done. This is a big deal. Consider them done. Because when we look at the new commanders today that I would recommend that you work on, QSH, I'm not going to tell you to stop working on this commander. There's no terminal state with this commander other than completely maxed out, right? What are we talking about? The expertise on QSH, man. Omniarch made a point the other day that, like, these skills are just so many words. The words, I'm swimming in words. It is making it so that once every 60 seconds, now for the first 10 seconds of combat, you're doing AoE damage immediately, and you deal extra direct damage to the target and drain 50 rage from them. So your Iron Pierce's bronze instant proc damage is going up. And let's see here, spending 25 rage per target instead of spending 20 rage per target. Won't spend without sufficient rage. Man, I swear, commanders these days are a lot more complicated than they used to be. But you'd always want to use QSH expertise, and you'd always want to max out every one of these skills. Like, what are we talking about? Like, every skill in this kit is doing amazing things. If we look at Achilles, okay, one of like 3 commanders you can invest in right now with a straight face and be like, yeah, we're on a meta pathway, right? It's funny, we don't even have to evaluate that many commanders. We look at Achilles. What are you getting from his expertise skill? Something crucial. Something that enhances his ability to do the one trick he has, which is to use his active skill all over again. So this is crucial. You have to get this. You absolutely, there's no terminal point on Achilles that other than maxed, right? Every skill's relevant in the open field, and every skill where you're putting points in is delivering value to you. And none of these skills deliver the majority of the value just from unlocking, right? Like, I don't think you're trying to skip these. I mean, I guess maybe. No, you gotta max this skill. Like, so you gotta max Achilles, right? So all the things that made a 5511 commander viable, that does not really apply today. I mean, you could use him unmaxed, but that's not an end state. That's not a goal state for him. You got to keep going. You got to keep. This is not Leonidas looking, okay? Like, Leonidas looking, that's a whole nother hourglass chest hair situation that we could talk about later. Here we have a neck and pants situation. Ay. Let's not get too excited. So the other commander we could get a look at before I go to GG, who's not yet released in the game, is we could go and we can look at Arthur. Because theoretically, you could pair Achilles with Arthur. I think GG might be better, but he's not here yet, right? But if we get a look at Arthur's kit, do we like the third skill? Well, let's see. If this commander is serving as the primary commander, you get Scabbard of the Lake, 10% bonus to combo, and if you're attacking a field troop, that bonus is tripled. Yeah, I like 30% bonus to combo damage. Not as good as Esong, giving 50%, but they're not going to give us a commander like Esong again. But this is 30% is pretty good. That's pretty close to Esong levels of boosting, right? I mean, it's close as you frequently get. I guess Nevsky maybe does a little more there. The next skill here, fourth skill, if this commander is attacking a field troop, whenever it launches a combo attack or deals direct damage, there's a 30% chance to reduce the target's rage by 100 per second for 2 seconds. I mean, you could go with the rage speed reduction of 50 per second, I guess. You could make the argument for this skill, unmaxed, it'd be alright. But obviously, more rage reduction is better. Right? It's not like Saladin's fourth skill that's for hitting cities or whatever. What about the expertise? If you're serving as the primary, they gain the Light of the Lake. Whenever their troop launches a basic, you have a 50% chance of an extra combo. Man, that seems really good. And it can trigger multiple times per second. I mean, I guess you could use them unmaxed. I guess, right? But like, the point that I'm making is that the power level on these commanders is just like so high that like you really just need to go max them. And the other reason I'm saying you need to go max them is that back in the day, you could generate good reports with unmaxed commanders. Today, I'm telling you right, like in recent KVKs, I ran around with Huo and this guy maxed. And I'm getting rolled, okay? I'm hoping for even trades. I even made the claim on my restart account, my small account, where I had Huo Max Arthur, that like, I shouldn't have even ran it out of my city. I should have just used QSH, right? So the whole point of 5511 back in the day was that you were building out 5 viable field marches so that you could have more marches in the field. And when you need more marches in the field, when you need momentum on the field, more marches is better. But if you're in a war of attrition and trading, trade quality is better. So like, funny enough, I made the comment on my restart account in the last KVK where I had a fight on it that, gosh, like, I'd have been better off just running QSH Zhuge Liang as like my only march and just run it out of my city 24/7 if that was like a thing I could have actually done, which it isn't, because, you know, I actually sleep. So, all that to say, I don't think unmaxed commanders are a thing anymore in Rise of Kingdoms. But, funny enough, there's one exception. There's one place where that's not true, to my knowledge, okay? And I'll give you one example, by the way, of like, you gonna run around with this guy, Philip, without maxing him? His expertise is like the best part of his kit. That's crazy. You're gonna run, I mean, not like you're working on Ragnar Prime anymore, but like, his expertise is really good. You're gonna run around without the expertise on these commanders, right? There's really, they do cool things, all right? So, you know, the commanders where you can get away with this still, funny enough, and I already hear the Siege players sending their malice at me in the comments, but I'm just going to tell you what every king has told me in any kingdom I've ever been in. So, okay, 2377 and 2293 in recent history. But they'll tell you that there are times where you just use Siege. And use them unmaxed, use whatever you got, and you just put them down in the right spot. And in the right context, any Siege you throw out there. They were telling me, bro, okay, let me tell you something. When we were fighting 1960, they were like, F it, put your gathering gear on there and run your dumbass Siege out there and just Everybody put a siege out there. And like, yeah, it works. It works. Because ranged combat, if the front line is just sitting there not going anywhere, which was the case in many fights, then bro, those siege sitting on the outside shooting in are farming. They're farming. And especially when we were on rivers, it was like, oh my god, it was a chow down fest for all the ranged marches, and you had more than enough notice to roach out before you got frickin' swarmed out, if one side or another was faltering. So, funny enough, the only world in which 5511 or unmaxed commanders works is with range, and that's because in the right context, range is so powerful, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. You're going to be fine. And certainly you'll do better than some of the weaker marches in the open field at this moment in time. So to my knowledge, is 5511 or otherwise unmaxed commanders dead? Technically, no. Technically, I think siege, you can get away with it in the right context. Not for all siege usage. Not even necessarily for most siege usage, but in the right context. Anything plunking down arrows over a river is going to be delivering value for you if they have no way to get to you. Like, obviously. Yeah. But otherwise, I don't think you're trying to use unmaxed commanders in 2025 going into 2026. The context has changed. There's too many dedicated open field commanders that can fulfill whatever need you have, that are incredibly powerful, and where maxing those skills is rewarded. In fact, we can go very briefly and pull up GG real quick, get a little peek at his kit, because I promised we would do that. Let's go see if we think he works 5511. All right, here he is. GG. The active skill. Some combo attacks, right? Some health defense. Increase your healing from Starlight. Cool. Second skill. We're going to get 10% less damage on the map, 20 march speed, 30 defense. Okay, got to max the first two for sure. Third skill. This is the whole point of this commander, is this third skill. This is the entire thing. This is the whole premise of whether or not he's going to be good, is this skill and exactly how it works, which we don't know yet. But if this commander's in a field troop, they deal 15% more normal damage. That's nice, okay? For combo commanders, this is a big deal. This is like you're looking for these E-Song-like boosts. It's not 50% from E-Song plus the museum buff, but okay, this is good. Whenever you deal combo damage, it recovers a large portion of slightly wounded units, 10% of combo attack damage dealt. Units healed by this skill cannot be healed by it again, and cannot be sev wounded, but will be slightly wounded until they return to your city. So you gotta at least be 5551. At least you max in the first three skills. At least. At least. But what about the fourth skill? Whenever this commander's troop does combo damage, you have a 30% chance to reduce the defense by 40% for 5 seconds. This can trigger 3 times in a single second, cooldown of 5 seconds. This is half strength if you only had 1 point in it. Funny enough, I think you really want this, especially if you're pairing with Achilles. Big AoE defense reduction. But, this is certainly not a Saladin skill of power. This is not a Leonidas skill level power, or power level skill, I guess I should say. Where, it's not like... This is relevant all the time. It's not like with Leonidas where you had to be below 50% health and you had to be getting targeted before it did anything. And even then it had a 10% chance to trigger, right? But I suppose you could get away with not having it maxed. But what about the expertise? Well, the expertise is enhancing, the most important part of what you're up to. Increase the healing from Starlight by now from 100% to 150% while you're Star Blessed. And you get health, and you get defense, and you get more damage factor. You want to max this guy. Right? So yeah, I think, funny enough, perhaps the only place you could do 5511 or 5551 is with ranged. And even then, guys, you'd rather have a maxed. You'd rather just have a max. I mean, I don't even think my logic applies to ranged, honestly. You'd rather just have a max anyways. Because like the ranged commanders are it's all open field. It's 100% open field goodness, right? This is my opinion. There's a small number of commanders that you should work on at this moment in time. The power level is too high now. And due to those changes, I don't think it's possible to generate great reports with things that are not maxed out. Now, if you're using meta commanders, like one of the 3 or 4 commanders I talked about that should have been maxed out anyways, sure, I'm sure you can generate a good report with that. Okay, you use QSH unmaxed, you'll generate a good report. That's not what I'm trying to say. All right, what I'm trying to say is back in the day, a terminal point for a commander investment was an unmaxed state. I just don't think that's the case on good commanders for open field anymore. Those days are long gone. All right, but if you want to see what I used to recommend, it'd be really interesting. I didn't even watch my most recent unmaxed commander video, so I'll have a card over off to the side. Let's see what I said then and how my tune has changed. But then also, if you want to see like what I said way back in the day, just for funsies, I'll have one of those cards in the end screen too, just to see like, I don't know, what did I think back then? My traveling is almost complete. I'm headed home today, which is awesome. I'm really excited to get back home. And I'll have to tell you the story about how I got into an Uber that had no driver, autonomous driving car, and how it got stuck. It got stuck and support had to save me. But that story for another day. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.